Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone.
Hey there.
So, right out of the gate, do us a huge favor and just hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps support the show and lets us keep bringing you these really intense deep dives.
It definitely does. And today's is definitely intense.
Yeah, intense is probably an understatement.
Yeah.
We are looking at a highly provocative new ebook today. It's called Sun Tzu's Strategy, Win Without Fighting by Conrad Riker.
Right.
And I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to want to open up a new tab and check out Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books to buy a copy of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Because by the time we get through this, you are going to want to read the whole thing for yourself.
Yeah.
And make sure you go follow the author at Conrad Riker on Substack too.
Yeah, his Substack is, well, it's just as unapologetic as the book.
Definitely. So usually when you pick up a standard business management book or, you read some Harvard Business Review article, you're entering this universe that expects precision.
Like classical mechanics.
Exactly. It's pitched like pulling lever A gets you profit margin B. You just follow the flow chart and the system works.
Right, which is comforting because it assumes a totally sterile environment.
Yeah.
I mean, the underlying assumption of basically all modern management theory is that everyone agrees on the rules in the game.
Which they don't.
Exactly. The standard idea is you compete on product quality, you build a nice corporate culture, and the market just rationally rewards you. It's a very Newtonian view of power.
But then you step out of that lab, right? You step into the actual world of primal power dynamics and Machiavellian strategy, and those mechanics just completely fall apart.
They absolutely disintegrate.
Yeah. We are not looking at a neat flowchart today. We're looking at a strategic landscape that is just relentlessly murky and, frankly, utterly brutal.
It is the complete antithesis of your typical airport bookstore management guide.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Riker isn't writing for some empathetic middle manager. This is a 2,500-year-old warlord playbook.
Literally.
Yeah, updated for this modern kill or be killed arena. And we should be clear, he is writing specifically for a male audience, like a red-pilled manosphere men's rights activist audience who are looking to reclaim power.
Right. In a society that the author believes is structurally hostile to traditional masculinity.
Exactly.
Which that actually brings us to a really vital disclaimer for you, the listener. We are going to be exploring some highly politically charged topics today.
Very charged.
Yeah. The book includes these surgical critiques of feminism, modern institutions, corporate diversity programs, basically a lot of social justice narratives.
And we are not taking sides here.
No, absolutely not. We are strictly your impartial guides today. We aren't endorsing Riker's worldview. Our job is just to unpack these fascinating, controversial arguments exactly as he presents them in the source text.
Right, we're just mapping out the architecture of this red-pilled playbook so you can understand it.
Exactly. So to understand that logic, where do we start? I mean, what's the foundational premise?
Well, you have to start with his idea that power is inherently biological.
Biological.
Yeah. Riker argues that evolution didn't design us for boardrooms or, democratic consensus. It designed us for survival.
Right on the savannah.
Exactly. And in that environment, the hardware was permanently set. He says losers are hardwired to negotiate and seek consensus.
Wow.
And winners are hardwired to conquer.
And he calls this the androgen advantage, right?
Yeah, the androgen advantage.
Yeah.
He focuses heavily on testosterone, but not just as a hormone. He treats it almost like compound interest for power.
That's a wild way to look at it. And he brings up this 2018 study out of the University of Zurich to back this up.
The Zurich study is really the anchor for his whole framework here.
Yeah, because they didn't just look at aggression, they looked at how the brain actually processes risk, which is fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Because normally, when you face a high-stakes risk, say you're launching a hostile takeover or betting your net worth on a new product, your amygdala lights up with fear.
Your body is literally screaming at you to run away.
Right, to retreat to safety. But the researchers found that high testosterone males process that exact same risk differently.
They don't feel the fear.
Well, their brains literally bypass the fear response and process the risk as pleasure. They get a dopamine hit from the danger itself.
That is crazy. So the biological mechanism is actively rewarding them for putting themselves in jeopardy.
Exactly. So if you have that wiring, playing it safe or seeking consensus isn't just boring. It's actually fighting your own evolutionary code.
Huh. So Riker is basically arguing that guys like Steve Jobs or George Patton, they didn't just have good ideas. They were biologically compelled to impose their will.
Right, their neural pathways demanded that friction.
And that's where he pivots to his critique of modern society, right?
Yeah, because he claims modern society is actively trying to castrate this ambition.
Right.
He argues that the traits that built civilization, like aggression, risk tolerance, they're now treated like diseases. They're pathologized.
And to prove how the market reacts to this, he brings up that infamous Gillette ad, the toxic masculinity campaign from a few years back.
Oh, yeah. The one urging men to, hold each other accountable and shed those aggressive tropes.
Right. But what's interesting is Riker doesn't analyze it on a moral level at all.
Not at all.
He strictly looks at the economics and the biology. Gillette took an $8 billion write-down shortly after that campaign.
8 billion.
Yeah, and Riker frames that as empirical proof. When modern institutions weaponize guilt against their core demographic, the men who historically built them, the biological and economic backlash is instant.
He literally views that $8 billion loss as the market's primal immune system rejecting an ideological virus.
Which leads right into what he calls the Damocles bind.
The Damocles bind, yes. This is his theory about the trap modern men are in.
Right, because society constantly demands vulnerability now.
HR departments, the media, relationships, they all tell men to open up, be soft, share their feelings.
But Riker says it's a giant bait and switch.
A total trap. Because the moment a man actually shows that vulnerability, society instinctively punishes him.
Yeah, you're expected to be soft, but if you lack an edge, you instantly lose respect.
And you're expected to be a protector. But if you show aggression, you're labeled toxic.
It's a catch-22. And he points to structural data for this, not just opinions, like the 2020 National Education Association report.
Right, the one showing male K-12 teachers face sexual misconduct allegations at, 10 times the rate of female colleagues.
Yeah, 10 times the rate, often with no evidentiary baseline.
And he pairs that with the 2023 Pew data on divorce.
Right, the custody stuff.
Exactly. 76% of divorced fathers lose primary custody, even when they actively seek equal time and have completely clean records.
So he uses this to map out a reality where the system is just structurally rigged against men who try to play by the new empathetic rules.
The courts still run on the primal assumption that women nurture and men provide resources.
So a guy can go to therapy, open up, be the modern dad, and still get stripped of his assets and see his kids every other weekend.
And Riker's solution to this is so cynical but fascinating. He calls it the Swiss bank theory of masculinity.
The Swiss bank theory. I love that phrasing.
It's basically saying you have to treat your vulnerability like a billionaire treats illicit funds.
You store it offshore.
Exactly. You keep it entirely hidden from the market, your competitors, and your workplace.
He advises just absolute self-censorship, not out of shame, but as a tactical necessity.
Right, because if the market punishes weakness, showing it as a strategic failure, you're just handing ammunition to people biologically primed to destroy you.
And he traces this all the way back to 399 BC, which I thought was a wild historical leap.
Oh, the Socrates execution.
Yeah. Athens executed Socrates for corrupting the youth, but Riker says his real crime was teaching capable men to question state dogma.
He draws a direct, unbroken line from the Athenian courts executing Socrates to modern corporate diversity and inclusion trainings.
He says they serve the exact same function as the hemlock.
Literally. They are systems designed to make capable men apologize for existing, confess their privilege, and just metaphorically geld themselves to appease the dogma.
But Riker argues that systems demanding male submission while relying on male valor will always self-destruct.
Because you can't shame a demographic into docility and then expect them to aggressively defend your borders or build billion-dollar companies.
It's physical reality to him. Like that stat he drops, 89% of Fortune 500 CEOs are over 6 feet tall.
That's a huge linchpin for him. He uses it to argue that meritocracy is basically an illusion layered over biology.
Because being tall doesn't make you better at reading a balance sheet.
No, but it triggers primal evolutionary submission algorithms in the brains of the people around you.
We are hardwired to defer to physical size. And voice pitch, too. He mentions Winston Churchill's microphone in 1917.
Oh, that was fascinating. The British engineers modified his mic to artificially amplify the low-frequency growl in his voice.
Right. They implicitly knew what primatologists wouldn't prove for another century. Low frequencies project dominance.
And they trigger compliance. Riker uses chimpanzee troops to explain this a lot.
Yeah, the chimp analogies.
Like how an alpha male chimp will physically break the fingers of a beta who tries to steal food, No HR meetings, no mediations, just brutal physical hierarchy.
Okay, but let me push back on that framework for a second, because we're talking about modern humans here.
Right.
If an executive tries to assert dominance by physically intimidating a rival, he's not going to trigger a submission algorithm. He's going to trigger a massive lawsuit, get fired, and ruin his life.
Absolutely.
So how does Riker's theory actually survive the reality of modern corporate constraints?
Well, he survives it by not advocating for literal violence. He's advocating for translating that biological impulse into modern tactics.
So the lawsuit is the equivalent of the beta chimp fighting back.
It's exactly. Riker says the HR lawsuit is the beta chimp trying to steal food, using the only tool society gives it. The underlying biological hardware of the people in the room hasn't changed.
You just can't break fingers anymore.
Right, so you have to trigger that same primal fear through overpowering physical presence, or terrifying silence during negotiations, or, and this is his big one, altering reality itself.
Okay, yes. This moves us out of the physical and right into the psychological. Section 2 of his playbook.
The fiction to fact engine.
Man, the fiction to fact engine basically facts bow to conviction,
He says weakness is just a choice you make when you lack imagination.
which is such a bold claim. His argument is that historical winners don't wait for facts to align. They manufacture a narrative through sheer force of will.
And then the resources and the public belief just follow that confidence.
Right. He lays out this playbook starting with diminish and distract. You intentionally leak false struggle.
You fake a limp.
Exactly. And he backs this up with that 2021 Stanford fMRI study on Schadenfreude.
That study is crazy. Humans literally get dopamine spikes when they watch a vulnerable opponent fall.
We're hardwired to pounce on weakness. So Riker says, don't hide all your weaknesses. Fabricate a specific one to draw the predator exactly where you want them.
It's a trap built on strategic humility.
And the Steve Jobs example from 1997 is the perfect illustration of this.
When he came back to Apple,
Right. Apple was hemorrhaging money. Jobs stands in front of the press and just says, we're doomed. Apple is dying.
and the press loved it. They wrote the obituaries.
And his competitors, like IBM and Microsoft, they got that dopamine hit. They relaxed and paused their own R&D just to gloat.
And while they were gloating, Jobs was ruthlessly streamlining Apple in total secrecy. 6 months later, boom, the iMac drops.
Sales triple. The competitors are scrambling because Jobs let them underestimate him. He fed their need for his failure while he loaded the catapult.
Elon Musk does this too. Remember 2020?
The tweet. Tesla's stock price is too high, Mo?
Yes. He intentionally tanked his own stock by 10% in an afternoon.
And the media called him erratic.
But Riker points out what was happening in the background. While the market panicked and retail investors sold off, Musk was quietly locking up crucial long-term lithium contracts at depressed valuations.
Oh, wow. So he created a distraction.
Yeah, and half a year later, the stock jumps 300%. Riker says openly questioning your own success makes competitors think you're unstable, so they ignore the structural moves you're making in the shadows.
And he systematizes this with an acronym, the FAKE stack.
Right. Fabricate rumors, amplify via bots, kill counter-narratives, escalate chaos.
FAKE. And for anyone feeling, ethically squeamish about this, he brings up a 2020 MIT study.
The one on how information spreads.
Yeah. People trust bold, emotionally resonant falsehoods over timid truths 83% of the time,
The human brain prefers a confident lie.
which is terrifying. But Riker frames this deception not as a moral failing, but as a strategic necessity. He calls it the rewrite doctrine.
Step 1. Erase inconvenient facts.
Like billionaires scrubbing lawsuits and bankruptcies from Wikipedia.
Step 2. Embellish the origin story. The garage myth.
Yes. Steve Jobs is mythologized as this lone genius in a garage. But Riker points out Jobs' dad was a machinist, Jobs had HP internships, he had massive resources.
But the garage myth projects this primal genius aura that attracts capital way better than saying, I had upper middle class networking.
Exactly. And step 3 is enforcing that narrative through absolute saturation.
If you repeat the fiction loudly enough, it becomes historical reality. And he compares this to Hannibal at the Battle of Lake Trasimene in 217 BC.
Hannibal used the morning fog to hide 50,000 troops.
Yeah. And then he had a small, visible group feign a panicked retreat. He lured 15,000 Romans into a narrow pass because they thought they were chasing a terrified enemy.
And then the fog lifted, the trap snapped shut, total slaughter.
And Riker compares that ancient manipulation of visibility to the 2012 Red Bull Stratosphere jump.
Felix Baumgartner.
Yeah. Red Bull spent $65 million marketing it as a raw, live feed from the edge of space.
But they had a 40-second broadcast delay. Exactly. If Baumgartner's suit depressurized, or he burned up, the public would never see it. Red Bull retained absolute control of the narrative.
They manufactured the illusion of risk, but kept total safety.
But wait, if we're looking at this FAKE stack, we have to ask about the limits here. The book cites Y Combinator data saying 67% of startup launch dates are pure fiction to get funding.
Right.
So where is the line between Riker's market-making theater and, like, Elizabeth Holmes level fraud that lands you in federal prison?
Well, Riker is chillingly pragmatic about that. He actually examines Theranos in the book.
Oh, he does?
Yeah. He says her only flaw was that the physics of her blood machine didn't actually work. But he argues her tactic, weaponizing the baritone voice, the turtlenecks, the confidence to extract $700 million, was highly effective.
So he thinks she was doing it right, just failed the science.
Exactly. For Riker, the only line between visionary theater and federal fraud is whether you eventually build the thing you lied about. If her engineers solved the fluid dynamics problem before the Wall Street Journal found out, she'd be on the cover of Time magazine today. The deception wasn't the crime to Riker. Failing to manifest the lie was the crime.
That is a terrifying way to view the market. Fraud is just a failure of execution.
But Riker does concede you can't build a lasting empire just on lies.
Right, you need resources.
You trick people into giving you initial resources, but for long-term dominance, you have to transition to structural suffocation. You have to ruthlessly starve your enemies of oxygen.
Which brings us to Section 3, ruthless resource allocation and the Vulture Index.
The core thesis here is blunt. Empathy is what losers use to cope.
Yeah, he writes, carry dead weight and you'll drown in your own compassion. And he illustrates this with John D. Rockefeller in 1872.
During the oil glut, the market was flooded, prices were crashing.
And all his competitors in Pennsylvania were furiously slashing prices in a price war. But Rockefeller didn't participate.
He understood logistics was the real power.
So he secretly bought up the leases for nearly every single available railroad tank car in the region. He didn't buy the oil, he monopolized the physical distribution.
So suddenly, his competitors had oil, but literally no way to ship it.
He choked off their oxygen, let them face bankruptcy, and bought their assets for pennies.
It's the same mechanism as the Rothschild maneuver in 1815.
Oh, at the Battle of Waterloo.
Right. Nathan Rothschild had this unparalleled courier network. He gets word Napoleon was defeated hours before the British government knows.
But instead of buying bonds on the good news, he goes to the London Exchange and furiously shorts them, sells everything.
And because he's the apex predator, everyone assumes he has insider info that Britain lost. Absolute panic sets in, the market crashes.
It drops to 40 cents on the pound, and then his secret agents move in and buy up the entire market.
A few days later, official news hits, the bonds soar, and he reaps 100% face value. He weaponized their panic to multiply his leverage.
And Riker applies this historical ruthlessness to modern budgets. He calls it the scorched earth budget.
Treat every dollar like a mercenary soldier.
Right. He says you wouldn't deploy elite combat troops to guard a break room coffee machine. So why are you funding bloated, non-essential departments?
He specifically targets ESG initiatives, environmental, social and governance, and corporate diversity departments.
He calls them parasitic entities. And he cites a Harvard analysis claiming companies that aggressively gut these feel-good departments and redirect the capital to R&D grow revenues 213% faster.
213%. That fuels his Vulture Index. He says alpha leaders should spend mornings scanning headlines not for growing sectors, but for industries in absolute freefall.
Right. If airlines are tanking, buy jet fuel futures at rock bottom. If crypto crashes, hoard the GPUs.
He literally writes, your enemy's panic is your Black Friday.
It requires a level of emotional detachment that is borderline sociopathic. And he pairs this with burning the ships, like Julius Caesar at Alexandria in 49 BC.
Caesar torches his own naval fleet in the harbor so his men know, we conquer Egypt or we die.
And Riker says if your modern business strategy includes a fallback plan or a golden parachute, you've already lost. You gave your brain an exit ramp.
You'll never fight with the desperation required to win. He says corporate sentimentality is like organizational fentanyl.
It puts you to sleep right as competitors are eating your market share. And to purge this, he recommends instituting cannibal days.
Oh, this part was intense. It's like Jack Welch's vitality curve at GE, where he fired the bottom 10% every year.
But Riker takes it further. He wants internal departments pitching why they deserve to consume each other's budgets.
You purge the bottom 10% of your clients and employees every single quarter.
You force marketing to prove why their funding shouldn't be handed to engineering. It's a perpetual internal combat. But let's pause and look at the mechanics of this. If you implement cannibal days, aren't you just creating a corporate autoimmune disease?
What do you mean?
Like, if your departments are locked in a deathmatch for budgets, you're inducing corporate lupus. How do you build a cohesive product if design is trying to bankrupt manufacturing? It's like a frat house keg stand where only the strong cups get filled.
Riker actually anticipates this exact critique. He knows internal competition generates massive structural friction.
So what's his fix?
His solution isn't to dial back the competition. It's to overpower the friction with absolute, terrifying dictatorial discipline.
Just rule by fear.
Basically, he believes you can run an organization on the brink of civil war as long as the fear of the leader vastly outweighs the hatred of the rival department.
Which perfectly transitions to Section 4, the weaponization of discipline and the phantom deadline.
Right. Because to Riker, discipline isn't a self-help buzzword. It's not waking up at 5 a.m. and doing yoga.
It's an external weapon to crush mutiny. And he goes back to Caesar again, the mutiny of the Legio IX in 47 BC.
The veteran legion demanded land and back pay, threatened to march on Rome. Caesar didn't negotiate.
He used decimation. He had the legion draw lots and executed 1 in 10 men, randomly.
Sheer terror of it dropped desertion to zero overnight.
And obviously you can't execute your software engineers today, but Riker maps this onto modern tech layoffs.
Like Elon Musk firing 80% of Twitter staff, or Tesla cutting 10% of its global workforce.
And the market didn't punish Tesla for that brutality. The stock jumped 9%. Investors saw a leader ruthlessly eliminating dissent and poured capital into that certainty.
To make this operational, Riker introduces Skynet Sundays.
Skynet Sundays. For 24 hours every month, the leader acts as an unfeeling algorithm.
You remove all emotion, empathy, personal history. You just look at the spreadsheet.
The hardworking intern who misses quotas, fired. The toxic, narcissistic director who hits 150% of their KPI, promoted.
And you execute it on Monday morning without a flinch. He says this works because of the cortisol-testosterone swap.
Right, this theory that intense stress drains weak individuals by spiking their cortisol. They burn out and retreat.
But alpha leaders convert that exact same pressure into testosterone and drive.
So by doing these ruthless purges, you spike the organization's cortisol to force the weak to quit, keeping only the apex predators.
But what happens when you have a highly competent apex predator who is actively opposing you?
Right, you can't just fire them without massive disruption.
So Riker has this devious solution called the Trojan promotion.
The Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg example from 2008.
History remembers that as a brilliant synergistic hire, but Riker frames it as a pure Machiavellian trap.
He claims Sandberg was highly critical of Zuckerberg back then, leaking that he was too immature to lead.
Zuckerberg knew she was competent and dangerous. So instead of a PR war, he promotes her, makes her COO, gives her the corner office, massive stock options.
He trapped her in the loyalty quicksand?
Exactly. Her reputation and massive personal wealth became inextricably bound to his success. If she mutinied after that, she'd torch her own net worth.
He neutralized his critic by absorbing her into his hierarchy. Weaponized equity. But think about the mechanics here. If you execute a Trojan promotion, you're handing the keys to the castle to someone who fundamentally distrusts you.
Right. Inside access to financials, board members.
Aren't you just giving them the exact leverage they need to orchestrate a coup from the inside?
It is a high wire act. But Riker says you ensure the overarching architecture board, voting rights, bylaws, is entirely rigged in your favor.
So their only path to victory requires your continued dominance.
Exactly. And that flows right into how he views structural leverage in negotiations. The phantom deadline.
Ah, the phantom deadline. This is psychological warfare in procurement. Say you're negotiating with a labor union and it's stalling.
You hit them with an immovable wall. You have exactly 24 hours to accept these reduced terms, or the contract is terminated permanently.
You induce absolute panic. Their cortisol spikes. They spend 23 hours frantically trying to figure out how to survive.
And then at the 23rd hour, right as they're breaking, you step in magnanimously.
I value our relationship. I'll give you another 48 hours.
And Riker says the psychological whiplash creates profound relief instead of rage. They eagerly sign the terrible terms they would have fought against a day ago.
The contrast effect weaponized? And Riker claims people actually respect this brutality. He cites data that 81% of terminated employees or squeezed suppliers eventually praise hardball leaders.
Because humans fundamentally respect structure over sentiment. We crave a predictable hierarchy, even a merciless one, over a chaotic, empathetic environment.
Which brings us to the final, most expansive thesis of the book. Section 5, Institutional Capture and Achieving Immortality.
The end game.
If you master dominance, reality engineering, resource suffocation, and discipline, what is the point?
According to Riker, the point is capturing institutions.
Right, because he argues that before modern institutions were captured by feminists and Marxists, which is his framing, they were built by ruthless men as perpetual reputation engines.
And to capture them today, you use the Lerna strategy, named after the multi-headed Hydra.
You become a five-headed beast. You don't just lobby one senator.
Big tech monopolies spend $20 million annually lobbying Congress, while funding FTC research, embedding lawyers in the EU, donating to state AGs, and endowing Ivy League law chairs all at once.
And the ultimate goal is the revolving door. He points to the FDA.
A ProPublica finding showed 62% of FDA commissioners since 2000 left their government posts to immediately join pharmaceutical boards.
The very companies they were just regulating. Riker says this isn't a conspiracy, it's just the physics of power.
Career arbitrage. The regulator aligns actions to secure a multi-million-dollar board seat. The regulator becomes the regulated.
The institution is neutralized, and if you're too small to buy our regulators, you use regulations as weapons. The Kafka bureaucracy.
He gives this infuriating example of a Midwestern factory owner trying to scale up. He got 37 OSHA violations in 1 year.
And they weren't for toxic exposure. They're cascading violations because a break room coffee machine was 3 inches out of compliance.
Riker's profound point is that the goal of hyperregulation isn't worker safety. It's a moat for monopolies.
Giant corporations have armies of lawyers to navigate coffee machine regulations. The mom-and-pop factory gets crushed by fines.
Laws aren't guardrails. They are weapons wielded by the strong against the emerging.
The ultimate expression of this is Walt Disney in 1967, drafting the Reedy Creek Improvement Act.
Disney didn't want to deal with local zoning boards. That requires data negotiation.
So they lobbied the state to become their own sovereign municipal government, tax-free bonds, their own roads, bypassing standard democracy.
Total corporate sovereignty, which scales up into what Riker calls posthumous dominance.
Rewriting history permanently, like Alfred Nobel.
Nobel invented dynamite. He was a war profiteer. In 1888, a paper accidentally published his obituary early. The Merchant of Death is dead.
He panicked at the historical judgment and used his fortune to invent the Peace Prize. He laundered his blood reputation into a pristine institution.
Andrew Carnegie did the exact same thing with 1,600 public libraries.
He's remembered as a benevolent philanthropist, but he funded those libraries with surplus capital from cutting steelworker wages and sending Pinkertons to shoot striking workers.
The libraries were a posthumous PR campaign in granite. Riker calls this the institutional sperm theory.
Jarring phrase, but the mechanics are undeniable.
Yep.
If you want dominance to outlive you, don't build a mausoleum. Fund a university department to clone your ideology.
He literally advises alpha billionaires not to donate to Harvard. The prestige market is too crowded.
Right, take $500K and buy the naming rights at a hungry third-tier regional college.
Capture the syllabus. Create a generation of MBAs who will write case studies defending your monopolies as disruptive innovation.
You capture the historical narrative of tomorrow. So synthesizing this all, Riker presents a universe where morality is an illusion built by the weak.
Survival is purely mathematical. Empathy is a structural vulnerability.
Which brings us back to where we started. Riker says legacy isn't built on participation trophies. Romans built statues to conquerors. But I want you to step back and look at this blueprint. If your entire empire is built on gaslighting the public, choking off rivals, and bribing institutions to crush small businesses, is that actually greatness?
Or just a highly funded monument to sociopathy.
Exactly. It's the ultimate prisoner's dilemma. If one person plays by these rules, they dominate.
But if everyone plays by them, the system might buckle under the friction.
And that's the final thought I want to leave you with. Imagine a world where every ambitious person reads this book and fully embraces the scorched earth mindset.
A terrifying thought.
If every corporation operated with this ruthless zero-sum mechanics, would society achieve hyper-efficient excellence? Or would we just devour each other in a zero-sum war until there's nothing left but ashes and algorithms?
It really challenges how we define progress.
It absolutely does. We started looking for a clean x-ray in a business book, a simple diagnosis. But Riker drags you into the mud, breaks the machine, and tells you to be the monster in the swamp.
If you want to survive the muddy waters, you can't be the diagnostician.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Sun Tzu's strategy, Win Without Fighting by Conrad Riker.
It's been wild.
If you want to master these forbidden rules of power, or just understand the playbook apex predators are using against you, go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now and buy the ebook. It will completely change how you view corporate maneuvering.
And definitely follow the author at Conrad Riker on Substack for more of his unvarnished analysis.
Absolutely. Finally, please do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button so we can keep bringing you these custom-tailored deep dives. We need your support to keep dissecting these fascinating ideas. Until next time, keep your head on a swivel.